talking about MMA, and I am talking about serial steroid drug user, wife beater, generally bad guy maybe, but was a hero once and stopped a mugger in New York City, so give him some credit. Jon Jones makes his return tonight, or this week, Saturday.
Actually, the catalyst of our friendship, MMA, UFC.
Yeah, that was definitely like our long form conversation probably started over Jon Jones, in all honesty, because like, when we first met, that was when he was still a good guy. And I think that's what I was kind of going back. So I was watching, I've watched DC 1, 2, and I've watched Glover Teixeira today. I actually recently watched the Shogun fight again too, which was relatively quick. It's so crazy. Like so Khabib's not the only undefeated fighter in the world. I think not everybody knows that. Right. Khabib is known now as the only guy to really retire from like a UFC caliber fighting, undefeated. And Jon Jones has a one loss on his record, but anybody who's hip to the sport knows that one loss is to Brandon the Truth Vera, and it was an illegal strike that wasn't an illegal. It shouldn't be an illegal strike. Matt Hamill. I'm sorry. Yeah,
Holy shit, he shatters, fallen from grace.
He shatters the orbital of fucking Brandon Truth Vera. Yeah. You're right. Matt Hamill, who shouldn't have even been in the cage with him that night. It was like Matt Hamill is a deaf person who, for all intents and purposes, probably overachieved in his athletic career a bit. He was a really solid wrestler, but had no other necessarily skills, and he has no way to get communication. Like, it was crazy he got to where he was.
And I do want to even clarify further into that, is that Lenny's not saying he shouldn't have been there also because he was deaf. Like, they literally pushed him because he was deaf.
Yeah.
He got into
the same thing with like Nick Newell.
Yeah.
It was a one-armed fighter who fought Justin Gaethje.
Yeah.
In World Series of Fighting and got annihilated.
Yeah.
And they never wanted like Nick Newell necessarily. They never wanted him to get to the level that he did. He just overachieved to such a level that they had to put him in a title fight. And then he even got onto the Contender Series.
He did.
And I think he won on the Contender Series, but it wasn't good enough to get him
the contract.
Yeah. But yeah, like it's the Matt Hamill thing. Like it was a feel good story, and that was at the time where the UFC is trying to grow their brand, and they're looking for those types of stories.
Such a good moment in history.
Yeah, it really did well for him.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Jon Jones is, to me, the greatest the greatest fighter of all time.
Yeah.
With a lot of questions, a lot of suspect. Yeah. Chael Sonnen just said like 2 days ago that like he 100% knew that he was like, I was on steroids. He said he was on more juice than Tropicana in that fight.
I love Chael.
He's like, I was on more juice than Tropicana in that fight, and he's like, I got you, buddy. Like, he's like, I could tell. He's like, I locked up with him instantly and could just. He's like, we know our own, was basically what he said. And he's like, the first it's the bumps and the abs, and then there's the nipples, and then there's like, you can tell by like the deltoids or something like that.
Yeah.
And I think if you go and watch some of those fights, you just look at his nipples and they look kind of gyno-y.
Yeah.
In retrospect.
Yeah.
But I think because he was always so thin that people didn't associate him with like a steroid guy.
Yeah.
But so you have those questions, but everything else in his career, that isn't, he's the most self-induced form of like career suicide, professionally, that you could have, because he was Roy Jones. He was like the Mayweather. Like all of those awards or like accolades that they could give were being given to him because he was so young and ahead of his time, and the way he threw strikes and how creative he was and all of this stuff. It was what Conor McGregor became, is what Jon Jones was supposed to be, right? Jon Jones, before the UFC got to ESPN, was going to be the guy that was clean cut and was going to get them to ESPN.
He was the Michael B. Jordan.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And the problem was, and hopefully we don't find this out about Michael B. Jordan, but it's like Jon Jones was essentially living a lie that whole time.
Yes.
And that's what Rashad Evans was trying to tell us. That's what anybody who was actually around him or fighting him at that time, like Cormier exposed it for the most part. Yep. But like everybody was telling us like, yeah, man, you're not who you act like you are in front of the cameras. And this isn't the guy. And it's very true to this point, and I said it to you today watching the arm wrenches that he does. I think will just show you the mentality that he has, that he is a vicious guy.
Yeah.
He's a serial killer in a way, and that's why he's so fucking methodical and so great of a fighter. And I could hate him as a person so much, and I do think he became relatively safe and boring.
Yes.
And that could be USADA. Like, I think we'll know this weekend a bit. Like, I was thinking about that watching the first Daniel Cormier fight. They ain't wearing Reebok. Mike Goldberg is still the announcer.
Mm-hmm.
When Ariel was asking Chael about the steroid stuff with John Jones, it's like, well, it's like, how'd you guys pass? And it's like, well, it's more of an idiot test back then. It was more like they told you when they were coming to test. So you either had to be a fucking idiot or you had to get bad information from somebody to fail those tests.
Yes.
So we all could do it.
Yeah.
And it was as simple as that, right? And it's like, since it's been gone, Kelly Clarkson.
I could breathe the first time.
It's been Oven. I think it went Oven St. Preux DC2, and then you get the Reyes fight and the Anthony Smith fights are in there, and Thiago Santos.
Yeah.
All three of those fights are the ones he had post DC2, basically.
Yeah.
And they're all pretty bad. They're all fairly boring, safe fights. And I don't know if that's because you're not on the EPO to keep the gas tank running for 5 rounds like you did before.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we get there, we get a little older, we're not on that supplemental stuff. Chael brought up that if, like, I think he was mentioning, John, if you watch the Embeddeds, he's doing a lot of water-based trainings this week, and that's a sign of a guy who's trying to recover, not a guy who's trying to peak for a fight. And is that a question of the wear and tear that, like, his body, you know, he's making, like, they always say, like, the difference between the guys on TRT is that, like, training camp's fucking hard, and the TRT was like a refresh that like made it so they could train every day like they were younger again. You know, the guy's in his 30s, he's added 40 pounds of muscle. That's not, you know, try running. Like I do it, right? Like I fucking walk around on my feet 8 hours a day for work, and it destroys me. And I'm just walking because of my size. So try adding 40 pounds of weight and try doing road work. You ain't doing it
what
anymore.
You used to do when you were not.
You do not do it anymore. I forget what fight I was watching the other day, but they were saying that like the guy doesn't even run on you know what it was? It wasn't even that. It was a football player. He had been in the league for 9 years and he's retired now, and he was basically just like, I would tell anybody to never let, like, any athlete coming up, don't let them shoot those things into you. Don't take the shots. Because the shots have got me to a point now where, I had a great 9-year career and I've loved all the moments on the field. But if I could trade it all in, I would, because I can't function in my regular life anymore. I can't walk on pavement without feeling it in my knees, because they were shot to shit and they wore out all the cartilage and everything else. And it's a lot the same thing to me that like you might see with the John Jones, and I'd be curious this weekend is, if you he added the weight the right way. It seems, right? He's taken 3 years to like build and bulk.
There's an asterisk there, but continue.
What's your asterisk?
I mean, the 3 years wasn't just because he was like,
I get that, but like he also could have just gotten fat and lazy, and like, you know, the guy's made his money for the most part at this point. Like, I think he always had the plan of being here. Self-imposed why it took so long. I don't know if it's going to hurt him or not. I mean, do you think that weight is like, because some of the thing that they said about Oven St. Preux, that fight, because the guy's taken gaps a lot of times in his career now, all self-inflicted. You know, but he's taken quite a few gap years. You know, a 2 year here, 2 year there. Watch his whole career trickle away. He should be retired by now. In all honesty, with the trajectory that he was on, Dante, you don't know this. I know. John Jones was the youngest. I think still to this day is the youngest champion in history. I almost think somebody might have passed him recently. Like, can you look up youngest UFC champion? It was John Jones at 23 years old.
It was.
I think somebody else might have just gotten it very recently that was also like 23 years old or something like that. It might have been a flyweight or something.
There were people on the path to
do it
and then got knocked off. It's still him.
Yeah. So 23 years old, he won the championship from Shogun. He had only had 10 fights or something at that point.
I will always root back to good old Tito. I will always root back to my initial thought of John Jones meeting in person when I said, this is a crazy man. MMA Expo, I think I told you this. MMA Expo, New York City. He's there. Carlos Condit is there. He's showing up on the map. Phil Nurse was there, who was their kickboxing trainer. I think Randy Couture was there. This is like peak Randy at that point. And John Jones is in, they had like this fake cage. And I was like, oh, I want to autograph from him. I love John Jones. This is going into the Bader fight. And they're like, oh, hang on. He's just going to use the bathroom real quick. And he runs to the bathroom, uses it, comes out of the bathroom. I took a picture of him running. I got to find it somewhere. He like looks at me like all weird. And I'm like, you just went to the bathroom in the Javits Center like with no shoes on. You're barefoot. And I was like, this is a madman. Like John Jones is a madman. And sure enough, John Jones was.
He was a bad man.
And even to elaborate further, like this dude, like this portion of MMA is like the golden years. Mm-hmm. Like John Jones at that point was clean cut Christian boy, Philippians 3:14, whatever on his chest. Yeah, I could do all things through Christ who gives me strength. It should have been 316. He the day before fighting for the belt in Newark, New Jersey, stops a mugger in the street in New Jersey, in Newark. Like, just the man. Like he was the man. Wins that fight, beats Shogun, the big, one of the big Pride guys.
Shogun had up to that point, like he was still in his prime.
Yeah.
Or coming out of the tail end of his prime, but he had gone on this historic run in Pride, the biggest company outside of the UFC in the world, and was like
that was beating, so good of an era, Pride versus UFC.
And the guys, if you like the people that Shogun beat, are legitimate killers. Yes. Like people like
psychos,
like Vanderlei Silva, Quentin Jackson, Alistair Overeem, like just savages left and right. And like this is the guy, John Jones is a 23-year-old kid going against a guy who's 30,
son of a preacher man.
Only savages his whole life, and here we are
living in his girlfriend's parents' basement.
Yeah.
Trying to just make ends meet. Like just like God gave him.
I was watching Ariel interview him from like 8 years ago, and it was talking about being a janitor at a school for a while or whatever, trying to become a fighter.
And then
he crashed a Bentley, and then it all went down.
That was it. That was the start. And then to steal the phrase, something that lives rent free in my head is I don't remember if it was Wink or if it was Jackson. Jackson. The only person that's ever going to beat John Jones is John Jones.
Yeah.
And this was from a documentary that was done on that fight camp, not about John Jones, but it was about the upcoming Donald Cerrone had just shown up. Carlos Condit, I think, was maybe the star of that one, or like the one they were like trying to highlight.
Yeah.
But Jackson and was it Mike Jackson?
It's
Winklejohn and
Greg Jackson. You know what's so funny? I was going through the same thing in my head, Steve, trying to rack my name. Like I'm like Jackson. Why don't I know this? Like I know who he is. I'm like I can't remember the name.
Yeah, they're it's about their fight camp. And again, back then fight camps were like everything. Like nowadays, I don't think fight camps are like that popular of a thing.
No.
But like, they're looking at this fight camp in New Mexico that like these killers are coming out of. He's like, and I got this young guy, John Jones, out of upstate New York. This dude's fucking good, and he rises and I ride the train with him. I'm like, he's one of us. He's a nerd. He's referencing Dragon Ball Z and shit.
Like it's like I was his age.
Yeah, you were. Yeah, actually you were.
He was the closest thing. Seeing somebody who's your age, and like, I was even thinking about this dude just in general, watching like the DC fight, and seeing him with Chandler Jones, his younger brother, and being like, that guy's my age. He looks like he's fucking 30 because he's so big and massive. But like, these guys were like graduating high school. Like this dude graduates high school, goes to junior college, and then he's just like there. Yeah,
and just throws it away, like just absolutely throws. And the thing is, it got to a point where every time he fucked up, I was like, you know what? I would have done the same thing. Yeah. Like if you took me back then, if I'm not the person I am now, but if I think back to I'm 2 years older than John Jones, like being his age, Luke Thomas even said it. Luke Thomas was like, I'd be dead. Like if I was told I'm the baddest man on the planet and had the baddest man on the planet money like John Jones did, I would be dead right now. So every time John Jones effed up, I was like, just mark one as an L. Mark one as an L. Like I would have done the same thing. But at a certain point, once the hit and run happened, I was like, you are in control and you're choosing to not be in control.
Yeah.
Like you have every reason.
Is it a choice though? Is it fair to say that's a choice?
If you're a sane person, it is. But I think at that point I was like, I don't. But this man is not.
I think you're immediately like you lose sanity. I'm thinking about child actors. Like these guys weren't insane. I don't think that they necessarily made it. They made choices early on in their life, but I don't know if those were really choices at a point because it was almost expected. I was watching a thing about this is like a totally different demographic, but I happened to watch a video on YouTube yesterday about Drake and Josh.
Okay.
And, Drake Bell, the whole first season of that show, they basically were like, this is the attractive guy.
Yeah.
And there's this really dumb brother.
Yeah.
And like the whole time Josh Peck is struggling with his image and all of this stuff, and the other guy's getting all this positive praise, but like people start really liking Josh Peck, and he starts writing storylines around him, and through the process he stops being the fat younger brother, and he actually gets himself into shape and becomes like attractive. But in real life behind the scenes, it's like he was nerdy, he was dealing with all the things that they were making fun of him on the screen, and then all of a sudden he started getting friends, and he started hanging out with these people, and he's a child actor, and he starts taking Percocet and fucking Valiums and drinking at these parties every day. And I just don't know if that's a choice at that point, because you've been put in a box your whole life.
Correct.
And then you get these options, and I guess an option is a choice, but I don't know that you could make another one in the moment, because you think that that's going to bring you like all this happiness that you never had before. And Jon Jones, it's like, yeah, like dude, to your point, like if you told me that I could beat the shit out of anybody who ever stepped to me in my life, I could have any woman I ever wanted. I can still have a stable house life too, because like his wife's never left him through any of this, right?
Fiance.
Yes. Sorry. Same the whole time, you know. But like he, you know, he's been able, I think the problem with him, especially, and the difference with some of these child actors to a point, child actors never get to have yes men.
Right.
Because it falls off the rails at some point. He 100% has surrounded himself with yes men. Like his whole life, essentially, it feels like at this point. You know, it feels like Jackson and Wink were yes men because he brought them so much money. And once he started not bringing them money or talking bad, I feel like that's when Winklejohn started turning on him a bit.
I'm going to disagree on that.
Okay.
Because I remember the interviews where they were like, we tell him after camp, do not go back to New York. Like when the camp is done and the fight's over, you need to
at some point
here.
Winklejohn stopped being one. I agree. But was this
this was early?
This was early, like around the same time as Jon Jones could only hurt Jon Jones?
This was
because why'd they keep him in the camp after all that when he stopped, when he wasn't listening to them, Steve? Because I think that still supports my point.
Oh well, I mean, first of all, yeah. If you can control the beast, you will make the money.
But I don't think they cared that they controlled the beast, because as long as I think my point is that, like, yes, they knew all of these things and they probably suggest it, but you can't stop a man from doing what he wants to do.
No, but at a certain point, like
they could have stopped having him in his gym.
Gym. But at a certain point, you're like, I can save this person. Sure. Like, what if I can save this
We're
person?
We're family here.
We're family.
Yeah, I get it.
Dude, move your family here. Like, we'll help you. We'll keep you on track. Like, you can be the greatest of all time. Yes, I am making money off you, but you can be the greatest of all time. Like, let's do this together. And it was that Gustafsson fight. Like, going into that one, that was when I remember them talking about, like, he, after camp, he goes back to New York. And we're just like, don't go there. Like, there's a lot of yes men up there. They're taking advantage of you. Stay here. Or go somewhere else.
It's funny, though, because he pointed for a long time to the Gustafsson fight as the thing that changed him.
Yeah.
And he was able to stay on the straight and narrow, and you didn't hear a ton about him for a while until UFC 200. I feel like is when it fell back off the rails again. But you went like 30 pay-per-views without hearing about Jon Jones. Because the famous story was the week of the Gustafsson fight. Yeah. The night before, this dude is on cocaine. Yeah. Drinking. Yeah. Doing like a fucking madman. Yeah. Like gives new, and then he shows up the next day and has the best light heavyweight championship fight of all time. And it was only
because he almost lost.
And it was only great because he did a bender the night before and was not as good as he could have been. Yeah. And he had to, like, for the first time in his career, and this I think earned him a lot of points, and this is why I will not pick against him this weekend. You know, that guy wants to fight. Yeah. When he's in that cage, like I'm watching that DC fight. Yeah. I'm watching go watch DC Jon Jones 1. Yeah. And watch how crazy frantic the first round is because of the fact that they hate each other. Yes. And the emotions are just pumping. Yes. And they both want to beat each other so bad. But at the same time, Jon Jones is a serial killer because he's the one who's able to control it. Yes. DC couldn't control it in the first fight, and it gassed himself out. Jon Jones was in control and playing. Like, Jon Jones is a serial killer because he's playing chess with you. Yes. He's never getting too emotionally committed, but he's watching you become emotionally
he plays
committed,
mind games.
You know? Yeah. Connor was kind of the same way, but then Connor did too much blow, and now he is also like a schizo fucking crazy person. But Jon Jones, I still think to this day, is methodical. I know that he's going to have a game plan to beat Ciryl Gane that is going to be perfect. For sure. And it might not always be interesting. Like, I don't think he's going to stop Ciryl Gane necessarily, but I think he's going to win a 5-round decision.
This is also the first time he's doing this without Winklejohn and Jackson.
I think Henry Cejudo has been very, very good for Jon Jones.
Potentially.
I think Henry Cejudo, his like analytical brain is that of Jon Jones.
Yeah.
Like I think, Jon Jones is probably the best fight IQ of any champion.
But does he respect Henry enough to?
I think so. Because I mean, how can you not? Like the guy's a multi-time Olympic champion. He's done something Jon Jones hasn't done. He's a 2-division champion. Who's to know? Because the Jon Jones we see on camera versus who he truly is are not always the same person. I do think that he comes off. I look at the people he's training with even. Like, I don't think that you can necessarily find heavyweights that are going to be as good as Jon Jones. So you can't expect him to build a super camp in that regard. But I look at the people he's brought in around him, and it seems like people he's trying to help. Maurice Green, and then what's the guy's daughter unfortunately passed? Walters.
Mm-hmm.
Like those are the two of the guys he has in his camp, and he's kind of helped Maurice Green. He's not in the UFC anymore, but he's a title holder in like a smaller promotion outside, and Jon Jones is in his corner with him. It seems like he's surrounded himself with it. He's built a team around him now, and I feel like it's people he wants around him, and that could be yes men all the same. I understand, but
if not for the DV, well, I mean, technically it's not DV because he didn't get charged, but the fact that
him and Dana White have the same track record now.
But and the fact that he put hands on his wife and fiance, and that the daughter had to call the police makes me say, you're still Jon Jones. Yeah. Like you're 35 years old now.
We can't run away from our demons, like those demons especially too, though.
But that's the thing is like that's you can't just isolate that one demon. That's your personality. Now we're at a point where
the drugs are your personality. Then
everything's
right. I'm just thinking about I've seen something recently with Bam Margera, and Steve-O was bringing him on tour. Yeah. And he was bringing him on stage on tour and showing him. Letting him have a 10-minute thing, similar to what Schaub was doing with Callan at a point. Yeah. Not because of drugs. This is him trying to save Bam Margera's life. Yeah. You can make a living. You can share these stories. You can bring people happiness and hope and show them that they can come out the other side of this. And every time he does it, Bam just falls off the fucking. And I just, those, I've seen enough people, those demons are just. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. I think we disassociate it with Jon Jones because there is a bipolar nature to it and who he shows us here versus who we think he is there,
But he's gone, man. Yeah. I think, will he win Saturday? I like to think he will. Yeah.
But I just can't see a world where a Gane who loses to Ngannou the way he did is able to patch up the holes that a guy that Jon Jones, as intelligent as he is. Yeah. It might be ugly. It might be close. Yeah. It could be one of those similar to the Reyes thing where Jon Jones might edge out an ugly one by grinding him out. But I think he's physically going to do that.
I don't think it's dumb money to put money on Gane.
Stopping him. I think I would put it on knockout if I was going to.
I would.
I wouldn't pick Gane by decision by any means, I don't think. Because I don't
still think, Vegas.
Yeah, and I don't think that he could intelligently win. Right. Unless John's striking is going to be that bad.
Or there's an injury.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. Now Jon Jones is at the point. He's been that way for a while. It's we watch to see who's the one that's going to do it. Mm-hmm. But he's still.
I think he wins this. I think he can beat almost any current heavyweight that's not Francis Ngannou because I think Ngannou presents the most interesting modern day Rumble type thing to him.
And again, F Dana White because the only fight we needed was him and Francis. Yeah. And it's gonna happen. I do truly believe it's gonna happen, but by the time it happens, the gas will be gone.
Well, I think Ngannou, if he loses to a Wilder in between that, none of it matters anymore.
Exactly.
I don't think
by the time it happens, nobody cares.
Any hype to it. Yeah. I mean, I love Francis for doing what he did. Yeah. And I hope that Izzy leaves. Yeah. And I hope that Usman leaves. And I hope the three of them decide we can carry a promotion on our own. I want to bring UFC to Africa. Or not UFC, but I want to bring a fight to Africa and do it that way.
The content creators no longer need to be on
Jake Paul
G4 TV.
Jake Paul essentially is mapped out. Yeah. Build your brand big enough and build cards around you. Yeah. But so we're both taking Jon Jones. It sounds like, despite the background and everything else that we went over. Yeah. I'm looking forward to it. Shevchenko fights this weekend as well. She's always a treat. I think she'll pick up an easy victory over Grasso.
Yeah. Can you pull up the card real quick?
But those are the only two that majorly stand out. And it seems like in the past, I feel like Jon Jones has been one of those cards where they just put Jon Jones at the top of it, and then they don't need to put anything necessarily underneath him.
Does this sell well? I think no.
I think it does. I don't think anything sells well anymore because of the ESPN deal.
Yeah.
But it does. I'm lying because they're more profitable than they've ever been. But
because of the deal. But is it enough?
But even I think because of the pandemic. I think that the pandemic was the best thing that happened for companies like the UFC because they were the ones who got the publicity of continuing through it. It was negative for a bit.
Yeah.
But then once they figured it out, I think that they kind of got it down. Oh, Shazmat or the Jeff Neal fight there.
Yeah.
Shavkat.
You're going to ask me to read this?
Yeah.
Shavkat Rakhmonov.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's nasty. Like, that guy is fucking nasty. And Jeff Neal just came off of beating the brakes off of somebody in his last fight, and I can't remember. So,
yeah. I don't think this does well because it's...
I think it does like 350. I think 350,000 buys.
Because he was
500
he was struggling to hit 500 back.
But the UFC brand now I think is pulling basically 200 by itself. I don't think they've had any that have been really. Can you look up like the UFC buys? See if they don't really share it publicly anymore.
No. I think
UFC pay-per-view buys should be all you have to.
Dana just needs to go.
Buys.
Yeah.
Does it show like recent or is it just showing historical?
It's showing historical.
Yeah, I mean historical is just gonna be Conor McGregor. McGregor. Like that's you know, splash in a fucking GSP and a Brock Lesnar.
I at the end of the day, I hope Gon wins. To be honest, I need a Jon Jones humbling moment.
But I think America loves a comeback story.
For sure, but I've already given. I've
He's had it a few times. Yeah. I know. He's done the RL walk in the park more than once.
The walk in the park, and then getting. Oh, my favorite was when he got arrested for open container in Mexico.
The awkward.
I was giving homeless people something to drink.
Yeah, was that the one he had the gun? He was firing the gun into the air too.
Yeah, that's how the cops got called.
Crazy person.
I
love him, dude. That's that's so fucking reckless to just be like. Yeah, man, I got drunk. I drove here, fired off a couple shots into the air.
Yeah.
Called it a day.
I don't know why you guys arrested me.
Yeah, I'm Jon Jones.
Yeah.
I can do this.
They're like, it looks like a little bit of container back there, dude.
Oh, fuck, dude. That's so great.
But you know what pisses me off is that all these things happen, and yet the promo still goes on. Mm-hmm. And everybody who's like trying to take high ground on, morals and stuff, it doesn't matter.
I saw a promotional fight from the Slap House. From Dana White's little slap tournament there. And I was like, wow, we're just doing the tough run here. That's how we're going to sell it.
Dana needs to go.
But let's leave it at that. We'll do a whole podcast on Dana White at some point. Yeah. That could be a whole historical rundown like we did for G4. But, man, this has been awesome. I appreciate you for coming through, as always, my friend. If you could one more time run down where they can find you at in the weekly routine for us. Yeah.
Nerd Affiliated on YouTube. We have 2 live shows. Monday morning at 9 a.m., Nerdy Coffee. Thursday, 8:15-ish p.m., HeyArcher Live. Other shows sprinkled in between. Nerd Affiliated on Instagram, HeyArcher Instagram. TikTok, Nerd_affiliated. Doing a lot of content on TikTok these days and getting a lot of views. So feel free to check that out if you're more of a short form person.
Guys, become affiliated. I am. Please. Join the channel. Support content creators.
Yeah.
Dante, while we're at it, why don't you share yours? Where can they find you?
For the most part, I'm streaming on Twitch under Dirty Water ENT.
Can't swim.
Bro. I also have YouTube and Instagram under the same name. Currently, I haven't posted anything, but I will get on that very soon. So keep an eye out.
Nice.
And I am Lenny. As always, this has been FTWGT Weekly. You can find us at Instagram at Forthosewithgoodtaste. You can find us on Twitter at Good Taste Live. We are on TikTok now as well. I posted something on there, got 800 views. It was a very, very happy moment.
Wow.
You can find us at Pandora, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Deezer.
These nuts?
That's right. But until next week, guys, we love you.
For those with good taste.